Over 3,000 years ago, in the region that is now Israel and Palestine, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions was born. Judaism started as a faith of a small group of people before it evolved into the global religion it is today, shaping Christianity and Islam and becoming interwoven into our world's history. It has become a way of life for the Jewish people. More than simply a religion, it comprises theology, law, and countless cultural traditions. Keep watching to learn about the beginning of Judaism. The birth of Judaism. Before the birth of Judaism, the world was dominated by mainly polytheistic religions, where followers worshipped multiple gods that were often linked to specific natural forces or domains. A well-known example of a polytheistic religion would be the ancient Greek religion, which worshipped deities like Zeus and Athena. In Mesopotamia, where Judaism's early roots began, city-states like Ur and Babylon worshipped a pantheon of gods. Each god had a specific role. A god named Enlil controlled the wind. Enki was the god of water, and Marduk was the god of creation and the patron god of Babylon. Polytheism permeated every aspect of life, from politics to agriculture. Judaism's departure from polytheistic culture was revolutionary. It introduced the radical concept of a personal relationship with a deity who was not bound by a distinct domain. Instead, their God was omnipotent, all-knowing, and all-powerful. Judaism was a religion that emphasized a personal connection between God and his people. This was vastly different from polytheistic religions, in which gods were often distant and not known on a personal level. Sometime between 2000 and 1800 BCE, the biblical patriarch Abraham was born. According to the Torah and the Old Testament of the Bible, God chose Abraham as the father of the Jewish people. Abraham devoted himself to God, and according to tradition, he entered into a covenant with God, also called Yahweh, although that name may have been introduced later. Yahweh promised to make Abraham the father of a great nation and give his descendants a land called Canaan, a region that would become modern-day Israel and Palestine. The covenant promised more than descendants and land. It also laid the foundation for ethical monotheism, the modern name for the idea that moral behavior can be linked to religious belief. The covenant acted as a code of conduct, shaping the values of justice, compassion, and responsibility central to Judaism. These values would later influence Christianity and Islam. The Israelites and the Ten Commandments. Judaism's beginning went far beyond the covenant between Abraham and Yahweh. It continued with his descendants. Abraham's descendants may be referred to as the Israelites, the Jews, or the Hebrews, all of which generally refer to the same group of people, especially in the Bible's Old Testament. One of Abraham's descendants, his grandson Jacob, had 12 sons who would each lead one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Once a nomadic people, Abraham's descendants ended up in Egypt. According to legend, Jacob's son Joseph would enable them to migrate there. For a while, they thrived in Egypt, but they fell into slavery, a tragic turn of events that would profoundly change Jewish history. Around the 13th century BCE, roughly 500 years after Abraham's birth, Moses entered the story of the birth of Judaism. Exodus, as described in the Torah and the Old Testament, recounts how Moses led the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt, guided by God's hand. During their journey to the Promised Land, God famously delivered the Ten Commandments to Moses on Mount Sinai. Moses formed a new covenant with God and presented the Ten Commandments to the Israelites. Unlike elaborate legal codes from other ancient civilizations, the Ten Commandments offered a concise set of moral and religious laws. The commandments and the way they were given to the people emphasized the direct and personal relationship between God and his people. They set the core moral foundation for the Israelites, emphasizing honoring one's parents, observing the Sabbath, and staying devoted to only one God. The legal foundation provided by the Ten Commandments became a cornerstone for Jewish practices. It would later influence Christian teachings and Islamic Sharia, which is a set of Islamic religious laws. While they were influenced by Judaism, Muslims do not follow the Ten Commandments in the same way as the Jews and the Christians. No official document encapsulates Sharia or Islamic law the way the Ten Commandments do for the Jews and Christians. The Israelites in the Promised Land. Moses led the Israelites almost all the way to the Promised Land, Canaan. According to the Torah, he died at the threshold of the Promised Land. He wasn't allowed into the Promised Land because of an act of disobedience against God. However, he was still allowed to see the Promised Land just before his death and know that his people had finally arrived after a long journey. A new leader named Joshua led them into Canaan. The Israelites' settlement in Canaan represented much more than a territorial conquest. Their arrival was the fulfillment of a divine promise and the establishment of a unique cultural and religious identity. Upon their arrival in the Promised Land, the Israelites developed their sacred texts, starting with the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. These writings preserved their history, but more importantly, they laid out their beliefs, rituals, and laws. They provided a moral and spiritual framework for generations to come, and they are still respected and followed by modern people of more than one religion. Once they arrived in Canaan, the Israelites could finally shift from a nomadic people to a settled society. While this shift was well documented by the Israelites, it is also supported by archaeological evidence, like the remains of early Israelite settlements in Canaan. After they settled in their new land, they gradually organized themselves into 12 tribes, each descended from one of Jacob's sons. These tribes were somewhat autonomous, united by their shared covenant with Yahweh and their adherence to the laws handed down through Moses. By the dawn of the 11th century BCE, the Israelites sought greater unity, and instead of 12 tribes, they established a monarchy. Saul became the first king, but 2 of the kings who followed him were more well-known. King David and King Solomon were incredible kings in their own right, and each of the 3 kings has his respective story told in the Bible. King Solomon, who built the first temple in Jerusalem, was the last king of Israel while Israel was still one nation. According to the Bible, the downfall of Israel was a punishment for King Solomon's sinfulness. After his death, revolts broke out over who should succeed him as king, and the kingdom of Israel split in 2. Israel became the northern half, and Judah was the southern half. King David's lineage continued in Judah into the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BCE. The Israelites lived in Canaan for about 300 years. During that time, they built temples like King Solomon's temple and established settlements in many Canaanite cities, including Jerusalem and Jericho. For a time, they thrived in the Promised Land. Challenges and resilience. Although they made it to the Promised Land, life for the Jews was not without challenges. They faced invasions, conflicts with neighboring peoples, and the temptation to turn from their God and adopt other religions. They were surrounded by people who practiced the Canaanite religion, which worshipped many gods, including Baal, the god of rain and thunder. Among the strong polytheistic culture of their neighbors, some of the Israelites struggled to honor the commandment to honor only one God, and many strayed in their faith. Despite this, Judaism endured, strengthened by the Israelites' deep commitment to their covenant with Yahweh. Though some of them strayed from their monotheistic religion and the commandments given to them by their God, many of them stayed true to their faith. Despite periods of prosperity in their new land, the Jewish people faced significant challenges, including invasions, internal conflicts, and exile. Foremost among their challenges were clashes with the Canaanite populations who had lived in the region before the Israelites arrived. Understandably unhappy that the Israelites had come to claim their land, the Canaanites fortified their cities and tried to put up a fight. While sources vary about how hard the Canaanites were able to push back against the Israelites, there is one famous story written in the Bible about one of their clashes. The fall of Jericho is a legendary Bible story about the Israelites' first major military encounter with the Canaanites in a city called Jericho. While the Bible doesn't detail much of the fight itself, it tells the story of how the city walls came down. According to the tale, the Israelites, acting on instructions from God, marched around the city walls once a day for 7 days. As they marched, priests blew horns and the Israelites shouted. On the 7th day, the Israelites marched around the city walls 7 times. At the end of their march, the walls miraculously tumbled down, letting the Israelites into the city. Throughout the struggles of the Jewish people, their leaders and prophets reinforced their faith, focusing on the Torah and oral traditions. The experience of exile and perseverance in maintaining their identity set a new precedent that resonated in both Christianity and Islam. Early Christians might have drawn inspiration from Jewish resilience, while Islam, which emerged centuries later, incorporated the stories of Jewish prophets into the Quran, emphasizing the shared spiritual ancestry. Judaism's influence on other religions. While Judaism is still practiced, it also influenced other global religions that are just as widespread. When Christianity emerged in the 1st century CE, Judaism's influence was deeply embedded in its teachings. Jesus preached messages rooted in Jewish law and tradition, transforming them into a universal doctrine of salvation. The Christian Bible integrated the Hebrew Scriptures into the Old Testament, which remains a critical component of Christian theology. Islam, founded in the 7th century CE, also recognizes Judaism's foundational role. The Quran refers to Jewish patriarchs like Abraham, Moses, and David as prophets, acknowledging their significance in guiding humanity. Furthermore, Islamic practices such as fasting during Ramadan and daily prayers bear similarities to Jewish observances like Yom Kippur and the daily Shema prayer. While the two religions have distinct identities, it is fascinating to see how Judaism influenced other faiths. While Judaism, Christianity, and Islam diverged in their interpretations and practices, their shared roots underscore a profound interconnection. Judaism is the earliest branch of the family tree of these religions. Modern Judaism. In modern times, Judaism exists in diverse ways depending on geography, culture, and historical experience. It is now divided into multiple branches: Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist, among others. Each branch has a slightly different interpretation of Jewish law and practice. Additionally, many Jews today identify as secular or cultural Jews, meaning that they may not strictly observe the religion but still feel a connection to their Jewish culture, history, and values. Today, Judaism looks a lot different than it did thousands of years ago in its beginning. It was once closely tied to the land of Israel and is now practiced worldwide. Jewish communities are found in nearly every country. Judaism is also more accessible than ever, with access to Jewish texts, lectures, and online communities allowing Jews to connect no matter how far apart they may be. From its founding with the Covenant of Abraham to the present day, Judaism has become a global faith emphasizing study, prayer, and community. The differences from its ancient roots reflect how Judaism has responded to historical events and the changing needs of its people. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Judaism, its early roots, and beyond, check out our book, History of the Jews, a captivating guide to Jewish history starting from the ancient Israelites through Roman rule to World War II. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.